Velkommen alle sammen. I dag har vi gleden av å ha en samtale med Ari Gautier. We're going to do this in English today because that's it's not your mother tongue, but it's language that you speak very well, better than me. And your Norwegian is good, but not perfect. So I just had the honor of reading this book that Ari published in 2019? 2020.
Yeah.
And before that you...
21, sorry.
21?
Yeah, 21.
And I've read this one, which is the English translation,
yeah.
done by a guy called Blake something?
Blake Smith.
Blake Smith. And I had the blast. I started on the book on plane going to Barcelona, and I kept reading it in Barcelona, then I left it in my flat in Barcelona. And I went back 3 weeks after, and I continued, and I finished today.
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 Nice.
You know,
Nice.
Procrastinating. So I don't know where to start, Ari. You are living in Norway for
17 years.
17 years, and you debuted sort of like a late bloomer in literature.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You debuted with Carnet Secret de Lakshmi, and then we're talking 2017, 18.
Actually, I finished writing it in 2013, but it took some time
To publish.
before publishing.
Mm. And you have your latest collection of short stories called
Yes.
Nocturne de Pondicherry.
Yeah.
It's there, people can have a look after. And I run a film company, also a tiny publishing company, and Ari is taking part in an anthology that we're going to publish this autumn. And you are presenting a poetic concept in our book called Negrodalitalité.
Yes.
So I was thinking maybe we could start with the latest first.
All right.
Like, because you have written novels, short stories, and what you're publishing at Antipode Films, my company, is sort of a mixture of poetry and poetical essays or short stories with the lyrical undertone. So tell us about your latest ventures before we dig into this one.
Good. So first of all, thanks to the public for coming. I mean, most of the public is my friends. So thanks for your support and new friends. And thanks to you, because you've been my, since long time, my friend, supporter, and well-wisher. So thank you. So when it comes back to Negrodalitalité, it's a poetical concept that I put together because since I started writing, the political conscious become more and more strong in me. So I need to make a statement, a political statement, and that is Negrodalitalité. So négritude is from the Martinican, French Caribbean poet Aimé Césaire, and Dalit and the Dalitalité. So I put them together just to show that I'm not the first one, to show the black struggle and the Dalit struggle are the same. It's about minorities who get oppressed under a certain regime or state and institutionalized racism. But I'm not the first one, as I said, because at the time Ambedkar, the Dalit activist, was studying in the state. He was already in touch with Dubois, about comparing the two struggles being part of the same. And not recently, last week, they had a big meeting, the first time meeting, the Black Panthers from United States and the Dalit Panthers from India met somewhere in Mumbai last week. So how to put these two struggles together and me being part both, because as you know, I'm half Indian, half Malagasy, from Madagascar, and from my mother's side, we have what we call the Marine, which is from Indonesia, and my grandfather's side, they are Bantus as African, black African. So I claim myself that Africanity and that negritude is in me, and being a Dalit from my father's side, so that's also a strong statement to put these things together. So that is the concept of Negrodalitalité.
Identity is the core of writing, as well as it's the core of any forming of the arts. To what degree do you feel that when you sit down with the blank page, that your act of writing starts with identity? Or are you free from that?
No, I'm free from it. I've been struggling for many, many years. And mainly when you're a product of colonization, and mainly Pondicherry has a very complex and unique, I will come that later on, unique status where we became Franco-Indian from 1881. So that's a long time back. So you have become French from the French subject. You become a French citizen, but you're not fully citizen because culturally you are Indian.
Mm.
So only by papers you are French. So you already struggle with that identity. And so it passes on from generation to generation. And I had my own struggle till I moved back to India in 1999, trying to find myself, trying to find my identity. And after 7 years, I found my peace. See, I said, no, I find myself, I don't have to struggle anymore with identity, I'm just myself.
So give us a short glimpse, just very brief, into your lifeline.
Oh, no.
Like beyond. No.
No.
Just like super no, but as you said, you mentioned all those different
okay.
elements of background.
Yeah, I understand.
Like you
Okay.
both
So I mean,
genetically
basically, that's
so where were you born?
That's the thing. So the funniest part is like a life, you can finishing telling that in 1 minute, and you can live for years, and the story that you're telling about yourself, about someone, can be just limited to 1 minute. So I'll finish in 1 minute. So as you know, I was born in Madagascar. My father is from Pondicherry, is a Tamil, and we were under the French rule, and he went and joined the army. So he studied Vietnam, in China, and he went to Algeria. From Algeria, he went to Morocco. From Morocco, he went to Madagascar. So that's where he met my mother, and he got married. And the last one, I was born in 1965. So my father got retired. I just moved. I was born in Madagascar. I moved to Kurchukpo in Pondicherry.
At what age?
Not even a month.
I
was just born. I was born in August. I think in November we were in India.
So you grew up there?
Yeah, I grew up there, and then I moved to France at the age of 16. And I stayed there till 1999. That's where my identity crisis started.
Mm-hmm. Started to become too French?
But not enough.
Not enough.
So then I moved to India, and then I stayed till 2005, and I moved here because I've been living here for 17 years.
Yeah, and now you have 2 kids here.
Yeah.
And you work at Mela, and you writing prolifically.
Yes, I do.
Yes.
I do.
Then I want to shift to this one.
Yes.
Which I enjoyed so much because it's so witty and so well written, at least in the English. Wish I could read it in the French. In this book, somewhere here, you are talking about exactly that when in Pondicherry people had the chance to become French or obtain the French passport. And I think you write that those who had, I can't remember exactly, but those who had shown interest or like, can't remember exactly what they had done, but there were like some 5,000 people or something who
No, that is 1962.
That was in 62, yeah.
1962, when the French decided to leave Pondicherry. That was like after independence of India in 47. So it took like almost like 15 years of negotiation between the new Indian state and Pondicherry, which was a French enclave, and for Nehru it was impossible to have a foreign presence in India, in the Indian state. So they were negotiating with Pondicherry, and also on the other side with the Portuguese, with Goa. But that ended up in a more sordid and brutal way. But Pondicherry, there was a lot of negotiation. So 1962 is where people were given, that's what they call the option of becoming French or becoming Indian or stay French, because again they were not totally French, but they were in the French soil. So in that sense, even they were culturally Indian, they were some kind of citizen of France because it was a French territory. So it was very strange situation. So 1962, around 5,000 to 7,000 people decided to become French, and that's what they call the Franco-Pondicherrian. And to put things in context, you know, I belong to this very small, the minority of people, what they call the Franco-Indians, because they're not that many. And most of them, 90% of the Franco-Indians are from Pondicherry. Some are from Mahe, Chandanagar, Yanao, and Karaikal. These are the 5 enclaves of French presence in India. And actually, it was not even enclaves, there's like a trading post. You see, that's how we started. So 90% of Franco-Indians are Franco-Pondicherrians. And this Franco-Pondicherrian, that's why I said in 1881, just after the abolition of slavery in the French Caribbean and even in the Indian Ocean, the French government state started to think, what do we do with these slaves? They need an identity, because they were slaves, but now they are free. So they need an identity as a citizen, right? So there were a lot of things were happening. At the same time, there was one branch of, because after the revolution, and people started to think, why don't we give citizenship to the people from our colonies? And Pondicherry was the place when they experimented. You know, it never happened in Algeria, it never happened in other just to say about Madagascar, that kind of experimental thing. But in Pondicherry it happened. So 1881, they said whoever want to convert or to become a French citizen, so can become a French citizen, but the condition are you need to leave your religion, your customs, and your social even behavior, you can say, and take a French name, and then what is called renonçant, to renounce. So 1881. And my great-grandfather, one of the first one who stood in the line in January 1882, sorry, because it was voted, but it,
yeah, you write about it in the book, how
and
he
then he
converted
decided
to
to become French, just to escape to the caste oppression. You see?
It was only this? To escape
Mostly,
the
and it
caste
was
oppression?
also kind of a way of going up the social scales, you know?
Yeah.
No, because then it opens to education to your kids. It opens to different type of work which is not really connected to your caste. And yeah, so it's more like a material, what do you call it? Decision?
Choice, yeah.
Choice.
So basically, the location for this novel is a village outside of Pondicherry. It's called Kurusukupam.
Yeah.
say it probably.
Kurusukupam.
Yeah. And it's told in a very intriguing way. You're introducing this character called Gilbert Tata, like just in a few lines at the beginning of the book, and then the second part of the book is semi-told by him, or he's sitting in the Thinnaien, which we're going to come back to. But you also have a protagonist, which is a sort of young boy. How old is he? He's not sure, I think. Young teenager or something. The son of the soldier, the one who's owning the Thinnai, yeah. Like the guy reading Asterix.
Yeah.
That's
like,
you, no?
He's like 11 years old boy. Yeah.
11, yeah. So, and the first part of the book is a rich, entangled menagerie of people living in this place. So you're presenting a full village.
Yeah.
Kind of street by street and Thinnai by Thinnai and trade by trade and what they do and then who they married and when they get drunk and how many kids they have, etc. So it's really, really found your storytelling intriguing. And then, as I said, Gilbert Tata, he's an old Frenchman who comes back to this place and he starts telling
his own story.
His own stories with involving a precious diamond, which involved in like top world politics.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
Yeah. So basically, could we start with the Thinnai? Because I had to look for Thinnais on the net and stuff like, and I've seen different forms of Thinnais. But could you just say a little bit about what the Thinnai is in that village, in that community, in that culture?
Yeah, the Thinnai, for people who don't know, it's the kind of outside veranda which is attached to the facade of traditional Tamil houses. So, you know, in the beginning, it's very funny because when I started to research about the Thinnai is the waste material of the house, you know, which is left over, and they make the Thinnai out of it and they attach to the facade. So that is this storage. That is the story of the Thinnai, which I didn't know till I started to, deep research of the Thinnai. What is it about? So this is like waste material of the house that you finished building. The entire house is over, and then you collect all the waste material and you make the Thinnai. And that I find it very beautiful because you have finished something that is some extra, and you want to extend to that architectural element. And it happens that extension of that architectural element is so beautiful because it's a liminal space between the inside and the outside. You don't know exactly where you are, you see.
Sort of a liminal place.
Exactly. So the Thinnai basically in South India, also in Kerala, some places in North India also, they have this kind of Thinnai. But the Thinnai in particular in South India, it's a very particular, very interesting space because it's a space where you sit with your family in the evening. Those days there was no TV, nothing, the radio sometimes.
No TV?
No TV. Is there a world without TV? Right? So no TV, no radio. But even the radio was there. But that one time it was like family get together on the Thinnai and spend the evening. Just see the world passing in front of them.
As I was reading, I was thinking, just making a comparison in my own head, like to Norwegian balconies and verandas. Like they are very much private spaces. It's like it's not like I could come to yours maybe if I,
If you know each other.
If you're acquainted, you could, but you cannot enter the like floor veranda of someone and just sit down and you have some tea.
But that's the thing. No, that's the thing when we talk about interior and exterior, because entering inside someone's house, you're already entering in some kind of space of confidence. You don't enter in people's house like this unless they invite you and unless they feel comfortable and confident with you. So that is the difference between balcony, because balcony you have to go through the house and have access through some kind of steps. But Thinnai is outside. It's open to the public, but at the same time it's yours. So that's what makes the things interesting. So and not only that, the family will sit in the evening, and mostly it's for passerbys. They just walk. It's hot, it's warm, they need some water, they want to sit down, they just sit down. They can sit like for half an hour, 1 hour, they can have a nap and then they leave. And but as I always say, Thinnai, as nice it looks like as a place of hospitality, generosity, talking, discussing and get to know each other, it has its own brutality also, because Thinnai is also caste-based, gender-based, you see. Not anyone can go and sit in upper caste Thinnai. It's very different. It is not that easy. I'm not saying it's not happening, but it's happening, but it's not that easy. The guy will say, he'll chase him out, first of all. So it's caste-based, gender-based in the sense like woman sitting outside alone with Thinnai means she's a bad person because she's there to look for guys. So you see it. So it has its own brutality. So I'm not here to romanticize the Thinnai, but it has its own beauty, and it can be also the dark side.
Nothing is perfect.
Nothing is perfect.
In the Thinnai, in the protagonist's house, and his father is a soldier, and he's speaking French because of his the choice of his grandfather, I guess. And he has a brother who only speaks Tamil, right? And there is a sort of maid in the house called Lourdes. Lourdes. And she grew up in an orphanage with. And you dig into the backgrounds of these different inhabitants of this place, and take Lourdes for example. She had a difficult start, and there are several like her there that end up with little or no network, and they kind of end up in houses or like living with people, and you have this taking people in. But I guess that's still complicated in India today, like because of the caste system. Like you must step very carefully if you come from below.
So you see that different aspect of this. You know, you see, even some upper class people, they will take the maid from the lower caste. You see, but there are two different ways. There are domestic who lives inside the house, is part of the family, and the person would just come in the morning, cleaning and go
To work, yeah.
So that's like, it's just an employee. But the person who lives in the family, that is a little more complicated in the sense of, as you said, the caste and class and this and that. But I think 90% it goes very well. You know, the person really is part of the family. Just in my family, I would say that we used to have a girl called Lada, who was the neighbor's daughter, and that guy couldn't afford to have 7, 8 kids. So this girl came and she worked with us, and she was part of the house. And now she lives in France. She has 3 kids, and have a nice husband, have a nice life. You know, and that we allowed her to be part of the family, and we brought her to France, and now she has a. So that's what I'm saying. There are different ways.
Now you have this expression in Norwegian called klassereise, which because we have the same here. So class is very under-communicated in Norway. It's kind of a taboo, shameful taboo to talk about because we have this Labour Party post-war politics of everybody's equal. And now for the last decades you see that you have a severe increase in poverty, but people don't talk about it. And there is no kind of dominant left. So, but how do you see that those two things compared, like the Norwegian klassereise, in between social classes, people coming from the countryside, like studying in town and always ending up in the city, compared to the klassereise of caste-related class journeys in India?
Absolutely, that's very interesting you're asking that. Because klassereise happens everywhere. You see, all over the world. People always aspire to go up in a upper level. That's very normal. And the social mobility we are talking about. The social mobility is very interesting. And social mobility, for example, talking about the caste, it happens in a group. It doesn't happen at an individual level. You see, there's one full community which is aspiring. That's exactly what the Dalit are fighting for now. For the last 10 years, it has been Dalit activism has become bigger and bigger. They understood the modern technology, the tools they can use, film, music, and literature, for example. Anything which is accessible to the mass, they understood, and there's a new activism for the last 10 years. So this is an entire community which is aspiring to go up. And that has been happening in India for many, many years. You see, there's a caste called Gaikwad, and that's it's like now mostly they are from aristocrat and kings and the Gaikwad kings. But Gaikwad, and 200 years back, they were Dalit. So the social mobility exists, but it goes very slow. You know, that's exactly what I'm explaining in my first book, The Kanisuka Lakshmi. The caste is bad, very, very bad. I'm not here to glorify caste system, but at the same time it has its own dynamic of moving. The social mobility is possible, but you need to fight for it.
I was talking to, as you know, you had an Indian filmmaker called Nishtha Jain. She's a member of the Oscar Documentary Academy. She's a very huge name internationally. I asked her, she's making 2 films now, one about the recent farmers' revolution, and one with us about an old jute factory that's dying. And
Exactly.
And I asked her about what her new project was going to be about, and I said, why don't you do something on caste, I said. And she said, I'm so tired, everybody expects you to make something about the caste, social, do you understand that perspective? But I asked her, really? I haven't seen that many, but I don't have a full comprehension of the caste system either. I just know that there are kind of very sort of strictly divided, labeled social classes that are like...
No, that's true. For the last 10 years, I said that the different type of expression artistically has become more and more popular, more and more prominent.
Because culture goes across.
Exactly, and they're also targeting not anymore targeting the rural, but also the urban sector. So when you hit the urban sector, that's exactly where it grows. But at the same time, this guy that's very smart, because they don't only focus on the urban culture, which was like elitist some point, but they're also targeting the rural. So that is where the grassroots activism starts.
You got a very impressive blurb here on this book, written by Alain Mabankou.
Oh yes.
One of my favorite writers. He's probably a Nobel Prize candidate for literature.
Possible.
Next decade.
Yeah, yeah.
He writes, Ari Gautier is among the greatest storytellers of our era, and his book opens up a world in which the symphony of cultures we discover will remain engraved in our collective memories.
That was very generous of him.
That was generous.
Very generous.
But it's obvious that it's heartfelt. Because he would, it's not...
not really anyone can...
It's not something hasty. He's thought about what to say. How does it feel to get such a recognition from
it's huge. It's huge. I never expected this from Alain. I sent him a message first and sending the book, and he said, okay, I'll look into that. And then time goes on, and my publisher was putting a lot of pressure. I said, where is the blog from Alain? So I called him twice, and the third time said, mon frère, je l'ai fini dans 5 minutes. D'accord. 5 minutes. J'attends. Yeah, 5 minutes. Bing.
He teaches literature
in California. Yeah. No, he's huge. I mean, coming from him, it's like the validation. That blurb is a validation of, because I mean, when you are so big, you don't acknowledge an author just as like simply, just to please him, because your name is at stake. If it's a bad book, you say, hey Alain, what have you done? So there is a responsibility for writers when they write a blog, is what they stand for. So, so, and when it comes from Alain Mabankou, for me it was like a big gift.
Blessing, yeah.
Blessing.
You said you wrote your first book in 2013, or you finished it in 2013?
Yeah, I started in 2012, and I finished around 10 months after.
And it took some years to publish. I have no idea about the Indian book market. Was it published in India first?
No. I write only in French.
Yeah.
And I publish in France.
Yeah.
And no, why? Because I was not very what do you call? For me, it was not an emergency to publish the first book, because I finished it. I was happy. I sent it to a person whom I call is my literary godfather, and thanks to Krishna, you should listen to me, because Krishna and I, we met in Nigeria, because Irana was posted in Nigeria, so I followed her. And that gave me the opportunity to start this literary career. Otherwise, I would never started it.
Yeah.
Right. And a year or 2 years later, Krishna came with PP, and he asked me, very concerned. He said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm writing." "Oh, nice." Oh, blah blah blah. And then he said, "Okay, I got a friend in France, Thierry Naudin. He might help you to publish it." So I sent it to Thierry. That he was my first reader. And Thierry is really considered as my literary godfather, because he's like a 60+ year journalist, and now he's retired happily in some Loire Valley. So he read the book, and 2 weeks later, he said, "Wow, this is amazing. I never read something so beautiful." Because why he said that? Because he's against the, as I call the French mafia gang of Saint-Germain. You see, that's a mafia, which is very Paris-centric. So only literature from your friend and friends and friends.
You're talking about a very elitistic circle of...
elitist and very French-centric.
Won't let other people in.
Even regional language like l'Occitan from Toulouse, which is a beautiful language, Bretagne, will never have that same kind of exposure as a person from Paris. So then you come ex-colony subject, brown guy with a book and talking about post-colonial literature, no chance.
No chance.
And but this man was very nice. He said, "This is beautiful, you should go for it." So I did some corrections, and then I published it, I think in 2015, yeah. Because by the time I was writing the Thinnaien. But I was not about to publish it, I'll just let it sleep. And when I have some time, I'll publish it, and I publish it, and then the Thinnai I publish like later, 8 months after.
Your characters are very like phantasmical. Like you like to weave them out.
You just made a word, right?
Yeah, I made
it's a
I was looking for the right one, and then I made it. You see, that's one of my few talents. What I was trying to say is that your characters, they have funny names. Like in this book, we meet characters like Patrick Pigtail. No,
yeah, Pascal Pigtail.
3 ball 6 face.
Yeah, 3 ball 6 faces.
Johnny 1.5 an eye.
Yeah,
eye, something. Like you get the picture, you know. And I haven't read that book, your first book, but there's Tree Dog Baba, the dog, and there's an elephant there, and you kind of have this liking and tendency to create phantasmical universes.
I mean, you see, as a writer, the first thing is, however beautiful you write, is to find your own literary atmosphere,
yeah.
your literary world.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't create that, you can just write words, you see. And that world that you create in your mind should reflect in your book, and the readers should also understand.
Yeah.
That is, I call it like more like absurd, because
absurdism, yeah.
Yeah, surrealism, because I love surrealism,
and
from Edgar Poe is my master.
Mm.
And the first book when I was writing Kanasika Lakshmi, so it's about this temple elephant who begs, who is a beggar in the front of the Manakula Vinayagar temple in Pondicherry, and they have this tripod dog Baba, who is the dog, 3-legged dog, 3.5-leg dog, who pretend to be a guru, spiritual guru.
Mm-hmm.
And I have Alphonse, who is a mystical flying fish. So the layers of the story is to tell the pre-colonial story, history of Pondicherry, and also the post-colonial history. And I think Orson Welles is a big impact in my reading, like the Animal Farm. And I was thinking it was a challenge. It was a bet, because starting your literary career with animals take you back to some kind of very childish stuff. But anthropomorphism is a kind of literary genre which I like, because animal judging us, I like it very funny, but also I'm talking the cohabitation between human and animal. How do we live in a society? How do we live in a world with animals, and vice versa? But
yeah, Hinduism with all its creatures and like God
comes
to mind as well, at least for me. Do you think you have any influences
but so
from
then why did they put that poor elephant in the front of a temple and
that's what I'm saying.
torturing her for the last 25 years? Lakshmi is a real elephant, which is in front of the temple, and the poor elephant is almost like she's struggling, she's sad. And every morning they'll bring her from one temple to this Manakula Vinayagar temple. She walks in front of my house. I used to see her every day. You see, walking in front of my street, and then she'll turn right and she'll go on the Manakula Vinayagar temple. And then what she does, she collect the money, give a blessing, and give it to the guy. So that's her job. An elephant is not supposed to be there, you see. And inside is a Ganesha temple. So is there the elephant god? You are praying inside, and outside you are torturing an animal. So it doesn't make sense. That's absurd.
That makes sense. Creole is another term that is central kind of in this book and in your work. And Creole, I mean, you have Creole cultures all around the world. You have it in New Orleans, and you have it in Zanzibar, and you have it in Pondicherry. It's like, and in Pondicherry you had the Portuguese early, so there's a Portuguese influence from the 15th, 16th century, and you have English influence, and you have all sorts of Indian influences, and you have the French influence. What is the, apart from food and language, what is there such thing as a Creole identity?
No, not at all. No. That's why the Creolization process in the Caribbean or in the Indian Ocean has nothing to do with the Indian Creolization. because those creolization emerged from slavery and the plantation system. You see, it was violence. It's a lot of violence, and it was to the Afro descendants and the Indian indentured laborers and the white masters, and also Chinese, because Chinese also part of this indentured labor system. So all this community be mixing together, like a place like Réunion, for example. Réunion 250 years back, it was a deserted island. There was nobody living there. So you see, and the French, Portuguese came, and a lot of people came. They established themselves, and they brought these people out there to work for them, slaves, indentured laborers, and everything. So when you meet in one kind of cauldron, it's like it's boiling. You see, different culture, different way of speaking, different food, and different way of thinking, and different heritage. And so you bring all these people together, and you make something out of it that is Créolité. It's mostly used in the French Caribbean as a statement, but not as a process. Creolization is a process. Créolité is a statement. It's a political statement, cultural political statement. So in Pondicherry it's different because it's a community. It's a distinct community from living in Pondicherry, which are the, as I said, there's the Haut Creole and Bas Creole. Haut Creole means the High Creole and the Low Creole. The High Creole is people mixed, the white French person mixed with the Indian person, Indian lady. So there's the Haut Creole. But most of the Indian ladies are not really Indians because they're Portuguese descendant also from Troncobar, from Goa. So that is a kind of, but it should be pure French at the root. So there is the Haut Creole, and they speak perfectly French. And the Bas Creole is the rest of Europeans, Scottish, Dutch, Danish, Portuguese, English, German also. There are German in Pondicherry. There's one regiment of German in Pondicherry. So all this makes, all these people, European, stop mixed with some local or the Bas Creole, and they speak a very distinct language, which is Le Creole Pondicherry. But technically, the linguists, they say it's not a Creole because it doesn't, it doesn't have the same pattern.
Seem like the others.
Yeah, the same pattern like in the Le Creole Antillais or Le Creole Mauricien or Réunionnais. But technically, it seems not. But who cares? I don't care.
You once described to me a certain stage in your life where you, I don't know if you were riding a motorcycle. You were going back to India after being coming from France, I think you said, going to Hong Kong or Shanghai. You were in India and you managed to end up on this sort of almost magical island.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, did you, I don't know how old you were back then, you, I guess early 20s or something? No? Younger?
I think almost like 35, 30, 34, 35.
Okay, so it was around 2000-ish.
1999.
1999. Did you
so I was 34.
Did you have a clear intention to become a writer back then?
No, never. I'm an accidental writer.
How did it start?
It started like when Irina got had the option of going either to Kenya for 1 year, and Irina is an anthropologist, and 3 years in Nigeria. And since I'm so lazy guy, I said let's go to Nigeria because I didn't want to work. I was working in a moving company, carrying piano on my back and whatnot. And so I said no, we'll go to Nigeria. And one day before leaving, I think 2 weeks before leaving, I said, what are you gonna do? I said, oh my God, that comes the question. I said, I'm gonna write. She looked at me. Okay. And yeah, because she knows I like literature. I love literature. I've been always reading. But taking the step of writing, it's a different step. Right?
But you must have had some sort of confidence in your own ability to write.
I mean, when I was young, I used to write poems, but that's like teenage.
Like all of us.
Yeah, everybody everybody thinks they are Rambo or something like that, but So no, I never had even thought about writing. But at one point, I remember, here, Anya is here, my friend, in 2003 or something like that, I stopped working for the Norwegian company I was working for. I don't want to name them. Anya came and just me said, "What are you going to do?" I just left my job, and I said, "I'm going to translate a book from Tamil to French, and it's called the Vikramaditya book. It's about a prince and who carries a corpse on his back, and every day the spirit will tell him a story and to find the solution for that. If he doesn't find the solution, his head will break in 1,000 pieces. So that's called the Vikramaditya Tales, Kadagal. So I was telling her, so I'm going to translate that book. But that was like, okay, find an excuse. You don't remember, right? No. That must be one of these evenings.
But you didn't write anything from your teens until like 35? So, and you have no sort of like literary schooling or private courses, like lesson courses?
No.
But then when you started,
I stopped believing in formal education.
Yeah, me too.
Long time.
Me too. But when you started writing that book, you must have had some sort of revelation, because you must have discovered abilities in yourself that were
absolutely
quite great.
Yeah, that's absolutely. You see, that's why we moved in 2012 to Nigeria, and I think it was a Sunday, and it was when François Hollande won the presidential. Yeah, exactly. François Hollande. So that's the day we arrived in Nigeria. The next day, to start working, and got up mostly at the same time, and I sat on the dinner tables, like a huge table. I said, I'm going to start to write. And I started to write without knowing what I'm going to write. And from that time, I never stopped.
Interesting. So, and how do you write? Are you a fast writer or a slow writer?
Depends on the inspirations, and
Yeah.
But I spend a lot of time doing research, because as I said, the only very important thing is to, people, when we talk about Indian literature, mostly, for example, we're talking about, of course, regional languages, definitely, but also English as another major literary tradition in India. But very few people know that people are also writing in French. And why they're writing in French, that's even more a kind of curiosity, because people totally forgot. I mean, people are coming to Pondicherry now because it becomes a very attractive touristic destination, because of heritage has become a big business. And also alcohol, which is cheap, and good food. So, but even they don't really come for historical purposes. They know, okay, it was a French colony at one point, okay, but the complexity of Pondicherry history, which is unique for me, in terms of colonization, also decolonization, because it's very interesting how it got decolonized, because it never got decolonized, because the French prison is still there one way or the other. You see? And this is what I call the neocolonization of Pondicherry. But through mostly, they can call it culture or scientific project, but there is a French prison, because when they left in 1962, but even that before, in 1854 or 76, I think, 1876, when they lost the military war against the British said, you guys no longer have the right to a military power in India. So that was the condition of signing the treaty. So the French couldn't have any military power in India out. So they had police, of course, local police, trained by French people, but military, they lost the territory of India. Then they focused on saying, since we lost the military power, let's focus on the intellectual aspect. So that's where they started all this anthology, as we call the study of India. And there was even a chair in France, even much before Germany, which was the La Chaire d'Anthologie, l'INALCO, so Linguistical Institute. So they tried to win the intellectual war against the British. That's what they did. So most of the studies are done. There's still the École de l'Aix-Moyen, one of the second one, I think the first one was in Egypt, in Cairo. The second was the first in Asia was open in France, in Pondicherry, which is still existing. So that's where they're studying all this old manuscript and trying to find out the old civilization of Tamil Nadu.
You talked about the still being a French presence there. Could you describe like how if I would go there or if we would go together to Pondicherry, how would we see and feel that French presence?
It's slowly disappearing, to be honest. It's slowly disappearing, but at the same time it depends on waves, you see. But now more and more young French entrepreneurs, they go and start business in Pondicherry because they know there's a market for it. And now it's going to become what they call the smart city in India. So Pondicherry is on the list. So it means they're going to, there'll be some kind of infrastructures for tourists to come, and have a nice time. And more cultural places are opening. Restaurant, mostly it's a big business. And so, it depends on ways. But of course, you can feel the French presence, first of all, through architecture, because nothing more than visual. Because the cultural, you can feel it later. But what hits you first when you enter a city or a town is the architecture, is the visual effect of the city, right? So in that way, yes. And then again, Pondicherry is a divided city, and we still call the white town or the black town. So the white town is where the white people used to live, and the black town, which is the indigenous people used to live.
Still to this day?
Till now. But what happened, the white town, when in 1962, the white people left, the French people left, the Aurobindo ashram took over. So again, it's very delicate subject, but I don't want to go now on this thing.
All right, yeah.
But then the Aurobindo ashram took over, mostly the building. And those days, all these buildings, they were very beautiful, colorful building. But now they're only gray and white, which is the ashram color, which is very sober, you see. But those days, I mean, if you walk around the French white town, and the other side, mostly towards the south, and you can see all this oak, yellow, beautiful yellow, orange, and blue. And
organic color.
Yeah, and so in that way, so when the ashram took over, that's the white town, black town. So you can feel there's French presence, and again the street boards, mostly they're still that old, very dark blue with the white letters. Rue du Mois, Rue du Puy, Rue Suffren, whatnot. Yeah, the French presence, you can feel it. And there's a French consulate, there's a French Alliance Française. So there's a lot of French cultural institutions.
In India in general, I guess you have had like sort of a democratic backslide, like lately with Modi and I've been talking to several filmmakers recently who say that they're actually scared to like if things go on like this, they're scared to get arrested for making critical films like in 5 years. Do you have any connection to the literary circles in India, like feeling the same, that options are becoming more limited in terms of what you can write? Like,
you take that,
can it become like a Russia or a China in terms of freedom of speech? Or is that
then
too
again, but it's happening. We cannot deny that it's happening. But at the same time, the Indian state is quite clever, because a person like Arundhati Roy, our thing is that you can never arrested Arundhati Roy, because not only she's too big, but it's also to show there is a freedom of speech. You see, there is a facade. You can say whatever you want, of course, but then it depends who, and like for example, the Tamil writer Perumal Murugan, 2 years back, he wrote about some caste-based book in Kongu Nadu, which is in Coimbatore, in Tamil Nadu, and he got lynched. So he stopped writing. He said, "That's my literary suicide." And then 1 year after, he
got lynched by critics or authorities?
No, by the authorities and by the system, by the state itself. So in different states, people have different agenda, because you can't put India in one thing and say this is India. No. It's impossible. It's impossible. And different states, and mostly now we're talking about politics. So definitely some regions are more right-leaned, and where that freedom of speech can be little more difficult to other states. And so since it's a it's a federal system. You see, it's very difficult to say this is what's happening in India, but it's happening slowly. Yeah. Absolutely.
I think I would like to invite the public to ask some questions because they probably have better questions than me. Just shoot if you have some questions for Ari.
So you think Pondicherry is known because films like Life of Pi, they talked about Pondicherry, search animals, which it mentioned here. So you think it helped?
Rakesh is it's an interesting question, you see, because it helps for a certain sector. Like as I said, the heritage, touristic sector, commercial sector definitely helps. But I don't think intellectually it helps. Because it gives, again, that old exotic vision of India, you see. And that's, unfortunately, we don't have an adverse side in India. Talking about Orientalism.
Satprem was there. Arvind Ghosh took asylum, in Pondicherry. He didn't want to live in British India, Arvind Ghosh, and he wrote books about it. So
no, there are definitely there are, but these voices are not known. You see, again, that's one of the reasons when I write, because I'm an insider. First of all, it's easy for me not to throw stones, but at the same time to criticize those kind of exotic vision of India, because that we have been suffering for many years, many centuries, you see. And you don't know, you don't tell the proper stories. Like, for example, in Pondicherry, 350 years of presence of French in Pondicherry. Of course, we have access to education very early. But they taught us how to read and write in French, but they did never teach us how to imagine in that language, because imagination is important, and how to express that imagination through a literary work that requires to think in that language. So what they did, because that time the French system was such as they wanted to have some manpower who can go and administrate the other colonies, like for example in Indochina, in Indian Ocean, Réunion, and in Caribbean, Martinique and Guadeloupe, even up to Panama. So they needed people who go and administrate for them. So their language is very administrative, and at one point scientific, because there were judges, there were doctors. So they wrote literature, but these literature are more like scientific. So when it comes to novels, and which is a more popular literature, I would say, but then again, what is a novel or historical novel is how to appropriate yourself, your own history, to tell through your perspective. And for 350 years, so many novels has written about Pondicherry, but it has been always through a European perspective, French perspective. So they don't know what the Creole, the domestic, how she speaks, what she eats.
I find it very interesting what you say.
And what are these people?
But they don't teach you imagining in that language.
Yeah, they don't. I mean, imagining in a language is very important.
Yeah. They can kind of deprive you from...
Not deprive, but it was just a system, you see. It was a system which
use the language
we only use you to, to go and work for them.
Yeah.
But
so
Macaulay did the same thing for British. Macaulay, when he introduced English language to Indians, he had the same motive.
Absolutely.
Administration. Yeah.
But then again, you see, Rakesh, that's it's interesting. When you compare the African Francophone literature or the Maghrebian Francophone literature, or even to some extent the Vietnamese, they started to write very early, but as a form of resistance against the colonial power. You see, whether politically or even imaginary, for them, they grabbed the tool very early in order to criticize the system. And in that way, the Pondicherry were very slow. Because, why? Not in Algeria, not in Senegal, not any other part of colony, people were trained to go and work for the French administration. You see, so when there's a what I call volunteer agenda of forming a generation or community of people to go and vote for you without any sense of critic towards a system, you are mostly complicit of a system without knowing, and that is something very very unique.
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
Can I follow up on? So, when your book came out in French, which kind of literary context in India would it be in? Is there also many other fiction writers from Pondicherry that write French fiction? And what happened? Also, like, how did it help when it got translated, and how did it get translated, and why? And I mean, I understand why, but I'm just asking, like, how the process.
No. First of all, as I said, like, as far as I know, we are around 10 people to write in French from Pondicherry, right? And 8 of them, they wrote only one book, which is like very autobiographical. And it's like they wanted to write a book to get something out of the system, you see, their family life, simple, you know. And then it goes to all this identity crisis. They moved to France. Their parents were living in Réunion or Vietnam, whatever. So all this French colonial empire.
Biographical exile stories.
Yeah, mostly. And that's it. They never wrote anything there, like for 8-9 years. And there's one guy called some Adisian. He has written some folk tales, which is quite interesting. But then again, it was not based on Pondicherry. So there are 2 other guys who are writing. K. Madhavan is a professor of French in JNU. He has written a book called To Die in Benares. First in French, it's called Mourir à Benares. So it was translated again by Blake Smith, To Die in Benares. Then again, it's only around Benares. And then there's another guy called Pichaya who lives in Réunion. He's like an 80 years old man, and he has written like 3-4 books, and mostly about North India. So this is exactly where I want to come, that exotic vision of India, because the French imaginary for 300 years has been only Benares, you know, the burning ghats and
purely the exotified sites.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, and these guys, somehow, I'm not criticizing them, they are my elders, so I should respect them. But again, it's not my type of literature, because for me, it was important to get it back to Pondicherry, because it's not because my father is from Pondicherry. I never felt myself Pondicherryan, first of all. And it's not because my father comes, but for me, historically, it's so charged. To talk about French presence in India, you can only talk about Pondicherry. Chandanagar to some extent, which is in Bengal. But Pondicherry is very important. So I wanted to write about the colonial system in Pondicherry, and in order to write that, I can't go and talk about Benares or Thoothukudi or, you know, Kerala or whatever.
But what's the education system? They don't talk about Chola dynasty, which was so in South India. They should teach.
They do. But again, you see, it's very Rakesh. When we talk about, first of all, when we talk about South India, we talk about only about the inland, right? We forget about all this, the shores, the Coromandel. That's what the Chola Mandal comes from, right?
Yeah.
So the maritime history of South India is totally unknown, and that's where things have happened. They went to Penang, they went to China, they went to Malaysia, they were even up to Japan. You know, the maritime history of South India is still unknown. And thank God, in the Malabar coast, the Malayalam, a lot of institute are really working in maritime history. So that's where you get the history. So in that way, India still doesn't even know the potentiality of understanding the maritime history of India, because everything is centered inside, inland. So the coastal area, people don't want to know, this is exactly the contact zone. It's where people meet. And now we are talking about the purity and hegemonic culture in India, so the sense of purity doesn't come from the coast, because that's where exactly people meet. So it can be only inland.
I think thanks to Mr. Modi's authoritarianism, Tamil Nadu is one of the states that's actively going about carving out a historiography that's different from this kind of hegemonic North Indian one.
Absolutely.
And they're putting a lot more money into looking at this. You know, because Tamil is an older language than Hindi, people don't want it to be subservient to the national agenda. So in order to have its presence felt, I think they're going all out to say we are an older culture, we will not be dominated.
You see, that becomes a mode of resistance, and again, Thinnaien, that's exactly what it is. It's a space of resistance against, for example, the food criminality. You know, you're talking in India, right? Food criminality is a big thing. You can't eat beef, you can't eat pork, you can't eat this, you can't eat that. So there's a kind of very Brahmanical approach to food, and that's exactly what Lourdes doesn't do here, because with the Creole food, she's mixing everything from the baffa to the vindai to the fugad and whatnot and whatnot. It's exactly, the Thinnai is a place of resistance against this hegemonic culture. And Gilbert Tata is part of that, Lourdes is part of that. And then again, lastly, I would say, the Thinnai is a book of joy, the joy of being Dalit. You see? Because for years, even the Dalit writers have been kind of writing about victimization of being a Dalit. So the Dalit joy has never been out. So it's time to relieve the Dalit joy. And this is exactly what the Dalit joy is, because the Dalit humor, how do we laugh? That's why I'm saying now 350 years these people have been writing about us.
They know, it's so important to come out of the role of victimization.
They know what we were, they know what we worship, they know everything. Do they know what we laugh at? So that is important.
That's a
is
good point. Yeah.
Society. So this is about the humor. How do we laugh?
This is a part of what you're saying when you're saying taking ownership of any language, like to create your own literature. I know very little, but let's say in the language Tamil, how big is that in terms of books published per year and like competing with other languages, French, English, and Hindi?
It's huge. It's huge. I don't know the population of Tamil Nadu, but not only the population of Tamil Nadu, also the diasporic. There are a lot of Tamil diaspora all around the world: Singapore, Penang, Malaysia, now Canada, even in Norway, for example, the Tamil Sri Lankans. And last week I went to Dekmans and I found a beautiful Tamil book. You know, and finding a Tamil book in Dekmans is not bad. So I borrowed it. No, it's huge. But the only problem, it stays under a very regional or ethnic centered literature. It's only Tamil people who can read that, you see. And very few Tamil writers have been translated, unfortunately. So 2 weeks back, there's a new publication called Neelam Publication, which is a Dalit activist, Paranjit, who is a film director, who is very active now in the Dalit movement. So he has ventured different projects, like film, music. Arivu is part of another casteless collective, which is called, and festivals, and also book. So Neelam Padipagam is a new publishing house where they publish a lot of Dalit writers. But then again, it is only for Tamil people, so it should go out.
Now I understand you have the possibility of having your book translated to Norwegian. There is this.
I don't know. I'm still here. One of the representatives is here.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's confidential. No, but
no, I'm not quite sure, but no, they showed some interest.
Yeah.
So I need to go and meet them, and give them the copies.
Yeah.
And if they're interested, it happens. So, yeah. If not.
Yeah, I mean, your contribution to our anthology is in Norwegian.
It is there.
We've had a translator, in-house translator, moi.
But do you have option for films also?
Sorry?
Option for making a movie?
I don't know, making a movie out of Thinnai can be a little, I don't know. It can be like a Adur Gopalakrishnan movie, you see. It can be a very...
I think it could be filmatic. Definitely.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure. I mean, putting a lot of funny characters and...
I was impressed by how you managed to describe the different houses. It became very clear in my head.
No, because I used to live there, you see. I used to live there. It's It's a tiny village, fisherman village. And then again, as I say, no, how to appropriate history. Like for example, that tiny village is called Kursukupam, right? And Kursukupam, till now, you can go now, I bet you can ask 2,000 people, nobody knows what the meaning is about Kursukupam, right? But people used to think Kursukupam comes from Kursu, which is a cross, because of the Saint Xavier, Saint Francis Church. So there is a cross, and the Kupam is a place which is outside the city, which is like a small community living. That's what in Tamil.
Across outside of the city.
Yeah, outside the city, and it's a small community. So called Kupam. So Kurusu Kupam, from the cross Kupam. So when I started to write about this novel, I said, okay, Kurusu Kupam, fine. So, but before the church came, it must have existed. Exactly. Right? So the church came, let's assume 1554 or something like that, right? So before 1554, there should have been something there. It's just not like one day I put a cross and I make a village. That's not possible.
It can happen.
So I started to do my research, and to be honest, it took me like 6 months to find out where the hell this name comes from. And one day, never accident, but one day I found out Kurusu actually is not Kurusu, because it's just modification through years. It's Kurichi Kupam. And Kurichi is a small fish of 50 centimeters, silver fish.
Not that small.
50 centimeters.
50?
Oh no, 5 centimeters.
5,
sorry.
Small fish.
No, it's not small. Sorry, 5 centimeters.
Tiny fish, yeah.
Yeah,
like
tiny
a sardine or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's called Kurichi. Where they used to catch on that area. So then I got my eureka moment. I said, it's not Kurusu Kupam, it's Kurichi Kupam. So that's exactly what historical writers' duty is, how to find out what are the sources, what is the most, source which makes sense to history. Mainly when history is not taught to you at school, because I never been taught why the French people were there.
That's funny how they trace migration through linguistics as well. It's been a revolution in linguistic studies. Like it's kind of the carbon dating of modern era when it comes to migration, because you take 250 core words or something and then you can follow, and they have like, it's funny how you can investigate the past through language.
Absolutely.
Any other questions from our beautiful
audience? Could I ask you a question about the Renaissance? Because that's very interesting. That did you say 1880?
1881.
Wow. Because it seems like France has had such a diverse policy depending on where they were. Right?
Absolutely.
You see, earlier in that century, they just went out to try and make slaves all over again in Haiti, and that's within the same century. And what they did in the Maghreb was completely genocidal. But here, if there was the possibility of kind of bringing people and making them French, so can you speak more to that? Because
it's very simple, George, because the colonial system, even though it started like around the 1650s or something, that was starting to move for new horizons after the Vasco da Gama found a way, right? And the idea, even in the French imaginary, there are two worlds. As I said, the world of the Orient, what they used to call, or even Extrême-Orient, which is where India is. India has been the land of sages, the land of spirituality, the land of knowledge. So that exotic idea of very Brahmanical, again, idea, because they don't care about the other caste or people who are poor. No. The idea of an elitist, spiritual elitist community. And that was, for them, the Veda is.
So this opinion was formed from Indology.
Indologist, exactly.
Exoticizing.
Exactly. And Anquetil Dupont was one of the first ones who did that, who came to India and went back with Vedas. It's very funny. And then he went with one Veda, which is not a Veda, which is a false Veda, somebody has written, just to, to get some money out of that. That's called the Yajur Vedam, the 7th Veda.
Oh, huh.
Yeah. Wow. And it's only, it was written by a Bengali, interestingly, in a very bad Sanskrit that he was not masterizing. Then he got translated into Tamil at some time, and then again into French. And it was taken to France by Anquetil Dupont, who was part of the French presence, and he took it to Voltaire.
Oh, oui?
Yeah, and he took it to Voltaire. Voltaire read the book. He said, "Wow, this is mind-blowing," and he made the publicity for that book, which is a false Veda. So can you imagine the idea of India or Orient, the Extreme Orient, was very figé, I would say, very stuck. So these are kind of highly civilized people. But when you go to Africa or Maghreb, they are savages.
Right.
So
And
they
that's
don't
how
give.
white supremacy
Exactly.
and dominant supremacy intersects.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Goes kind of hand in hand.
Absolutely.
And that's how
So
we found
these
it.
people, they were savages to be civilized, to be educated. But whether in India, no, because these people are already educated. So the idea of savage, African as a savage, started from there. So it is deliberately done, institutionalized and racism. So for them, they say no freedom for you, no, you know. And when even Toussaint Louverture fought in Haiti, so you know, even they gave the freedom, they're still paying the debt.
But another very interesting fact that came out of what you said is like in 1962, one would imagine that South India, like the rest of the country, was quite poor, and despite that, only 7,000 people left. Right?
No, that was that. Then again, it's
a surprising number.
That's why it's the process of decolonization in India. It was very funny. I mean, in Pondicherry, because neither the French nor the Indian were prepared. You see, even after 15 years of negotiation, because of this Renaissance in 1881, right? Like as I explained in the book, my father is French and my uncle is Indian, right? But his grandfather, their grandfather, sorry, chose to become French in 1881. So means automatically my uncle should be French, right? No, it was not. Because 1962, at the moment of leaving, they said, okay, we give an option of staying Indian, not even staying Indian because you were not Indian, but between the French and the Indian nationality. So a lot of people said, like my uncle said, but I'm already French from 1881, so why should I go for the option? So he didn't go. But my father was in Fréjus in south of France that time. Even though he was in the army, he was asked if he wants to stay French or Indian. And because he was already in the French army, definitely he chose to be. So my uncle didn't never know that he was Indian. And I think only when my father came back in 1965, then he asked, okay, did you go and did the option? What option? He said, brother, sorry, you're Indian.
Too late now.
Too late. So, that is an anomaly. That is an anomaly in the decolonization process in Pondicherry, where people was totally confused.
Because with the British, it was very clear, right? You have to be an Anglo-Indian.
Exactly.
Then you're taken to Australia or places where
absolutely
they need to have more people.
Yeah.
With the French, and as a Pondicherrian, you didn't have to be, you didn't need to have French blood, for example. If you were no. French subject, that was enough.
But that's the reason. No, the after revolution, the aftermath of revolution with the liberté, égalité, fraternité. So they were still confused. Yeah. Even when the revolution reached Pondicherry, it happened in July. It reached Pondicherry only in October. That there was a French Revolution happened. So even people were happy. They couldn't understand how you make a revolution and you still have a colonial system here. So that is something we don't go together, you see. In one way you say, okay, every citizen is free, but you're still my master. So.
But that's a contradiction of the heart of French politics that continues to this day, right?
But that's exactly what I wrote in Nocturne Pondicherry, is the psychosocial aspect, because these are historical books, but that is a more complex of trying to understand the psychosocial aspect of what happened to these people who got caught between two system, culture, identity. Because every time in every family there's one Indian and two French, or so, and they have to live together. And of course, the guy who stayed back is poor, but the guy who left becomes rich. And how these two different level of poverty and richness live in the same house. So there's a lot of tension. You see that you don't reveal. When people say that, okay, French left without violence, of course there have never been a physical violence, but violence can be different.
Yep.
And this is the violence.
How do you
This is
think-
the violence
yeah.
of 3 generations of people still struggling and suffering because of a failed decolonization process.
What about the Dalit? They go through all the violence as well. Dalit.
Yeah, you take my example. You see, no, but that's to say, that social mobility, as we talk, Rakesh. Even though, like my father, my some people of the same category, I would say, because they opted for the French citizenship, they could give some kind of bright future for the kids. That's what happened to me. All right. But again, that's why I said, even in the long time back, I don't say everything is stuck. There is a mobility, there is a dynamic, there is a way. But when it happens and how it happens is difficult. But this is accidental. You see, people didn't have to fight for that, for the rights.
But the Indian president was Dalit, and
Yeah.
after Ambedkar, a lot of Dalit became Buddhist, and then they had equal opportunities. No? That's
Yeah,
what-
yeah, yeah. But that's why I'm saying, I'm not here to question what the system is good. That's why I said India is too complex to have this kind of binary approach. You see, and to say, oh, there have been people who have been successful after Ambedkar and everyone, but I'm not interested in people who are succeed. I'm interested in people who are suffering. I don't care who succeed, but when there are millions of people struggling out there, that bothers me.
But with the Portuguese, were the French as brutal as the Portuguese? Like in the...
No. For example, in Goa, there was Inquisition.
because
Absolutely.
Forced
Yeah. There was a
conversion,
forced conversion, there was Inquisition in Portugal, which was very, very brutal. That's why I always say, we cannot compare colonization and say colonization is this. There are so many different levels and layers of what happened. Like I'm saying that the example of the French, they came as to do business. So it was a trade post. It was not a colonization,
No.
but it is a colonial system. Taxing, how to rule the population. The system was colonialism, but the colonization
They
are
didn't want to
different.
make
You see,
like a
but of
full
course,
colony
yes,
with
yeah,
them.
as you said, it
All
is
its artifacts.
Portuguese. No, Portuguese was brutal. It was really brutal.
But the British came for business too. British East
Yeah,
India
1857 changed the entire
Company,
stuff.
and they didn't want to touch religion
No.
because
No.
that was
Nobody
cause
wanted
of
to.
mutiny.
Even in Pondicherry, then when the Jesuits, when they came and started to convert people, there never been a kind of forced conversion like in Portugal, and it was a voluntary conversion. So the Jesuits wanted, they dislike all this Hindu gods and disbelief, but the Jesuits at the same time, they're very interesting people. These are the people who are really mess up the entire situation. They come with their own ideas. They're trying to implement something. Something come out of that. So Jesuits, they're very, very fascinating. And my friend Ines Zupanov has written about Jesuits for the last 50 years. So one has to read Ines Zupanov to understand. But they're very complex and interesting.
But hearing you say all this, why did you marry an anthropologist? Love is blind. Ari, I think we're going to wrap up this session.
Lovely,
It's been an hour and a
lovely,
half.
lovely.
We don't want to.
It was beautiful.
Don't
Thank
want to
you.
go on into eternity, but you'll stay here for a little while. Books can be purchased, signed, I guess.
Yes.
180 kroner to my Vips. No,
You can hear
Just change the number.
You can hear the bing when the money goes for. So
Thank you
thank you
guys
very
for
much.
coming.
Thanks
Good
a lot.
questions.
Thank you
Thank you
very
so
much.
much, Ari.
Thank you.